trying to be sneaky about that. But there we go. We are live. Pingman, hey! Stream is starting. I started the stream and then well, no, I didn't start the stream. I did ping before I started the stream. However, not scam. Just like a little bit premature ping. Do you suffer from premature pinging? But yeah. Indeed, you are Speed. Question for you: how does the mic sound? So I got a new mic for the videos. You will notice that the streamer cam is not in frame. It's because I'm not using it. I'm using the new mic that I'm planning on using for videos in the future, so they don't sound like they're created in a garage. And I don't know. It sounds pretty good, I think. At least in the few tests that I was doing. Probably not as good as this one, at least for like streams. But definitely much better for green screen applications because we can hide it out of frame. Hopefully that is still out of frame. Yeah, it looks like it is. Can you switch between so we can compare? Sure. So, let's do that with the noise suppression still on. So it would be between. So this is the new mic. This is the old mic, which was muted, which is why you didn't hear anything at first. So this is the one that I've been using for a hot minute. It just works. And then the new mic is that one. So switching back to the new mic. See, this version of WireWiz was made by Razer. I feel like I have a little bit more style than Razer stuff. Then again, I would prefer to go green, so I might go more Razer in the future. How so? Which one's better? See, now I'm worried because you're saying that's a big difference. Then again, what we're really comparing to here is new one's better. The old one is fine though. Oh, okay. Interesting. So this one sounds crisper. So I'm guessing it's like grabbing more of the higher tones. Though one of the reasons I sprung for this mic as opposed to other boom style microphones is this one seemed to still have a fair amount of like that bass resonance still coming through. And where others are kind of like tinny or sound processed and a bit of background noise. Maybe. Then again, both are. I mean, I can change the dial on the old one too. The old one. What was the dial on this one set to? Because both of these have a dial. Like this one could be a lot quieter, like a lot quieter. It's actually kind of. I have it placed so it's like almost at full volume. But the getting back to my point, the thing that we're actually comparing this to, so yeah, it's gonna sound better than that. Now all the videos should sound like this. There is still the problem of filming in a garage, but that's why I bought like a ton of moving blankets and a few of like those super cheap like T-style green screen backdrops. So the idea is that in the garage I put up like a bunch of these moving blankets kind of surrounding the recording space, and that will like dampen the echoes. So this one was like $150, which is cheaper than I expected to get one this decent for. Because when you start looking into mic equipment, the price can go up a lot very fast. Let's see, what was I going to do? Right. Too busy talking about mic things. So let me show you guys what I got done while I was off stream. Because I still have been coding over the holidays. It's a little bit, I can get a lot more done off stream because I'm not, I don't have to focus on chat, so I keep on task a lot better. Indeed, off-camera mining. I got through a lot of like the more tedious stuff that needed to be refactored. Well, not the refactoring thing that was at hand. For example, one thing that I'm very proud of is, and it actually is yet to be fully completed yet, is I completely refactored the binary serialization system. So before, the way it worked is I had this input serializer and output serializer class. And there was a manual, and you can just ignore these errors. They aren't real. Anyway, but we had a manual piping operator overload for every single type or variant of type that isn't trivially copyable. And that was all like in one file, which wasn't great. So instead, I declared this serializer template class that allows each, like throughout my code base, to create type-specific serializers and not put them all in one file. Instead, the types, I can put the serializers right next to the types. And I even, because of how this works, we're able to like recursively chain these things. So we can do cool stuff like this is a serializer for standard variant. So I can throw any standard variant in here where each one of the args also has a serializer in here, and it just works. Oh yeah, Happy New Year to you as well, thank you. But yeah, as long as each one of these args has a serializer type defined for it, it can just recursively go through them. And I did the same thing for my option types. So that makes it so that my refactors to asset IDs, where now we have two variants of the asset ID. We have Brane asset ID for when you're using the Brane asset fetching protocol, which has a domain and then a UUID. And there's also file asset IDs, which you have a path to a file. And my plan is to use this for types that are embedded into the engine. So not necessarily allowing people to actually store stuff on their file system. I feel like that would be a rather large vulnerability. But this will be just for like built-in assets. So your default materials, your default components, built-in engine libraries, etc. And then the way we store that inside the asset ID is there's this variant protocol type. So this is very similar to Rust enum. So this value could be a Brane asset ID or a file asset ID. And this is the main reason why I wanted to redo the serializer system, was so that I could just create a separate serializer for the Brane asset ID and then file asset ID. And then what the asset ID serializer is it just calls the serializer for the other two things. And that makes it significantly easier to serialize things. But you'll also notice the entire serializer code, this little portion here, is the thing that does all of the serialization just here, because it's all using that piping operator that automatically calls the serializer class for the type. So that's what we did. You'll also notice this very Rust-looking result type, which works exactly like a Rust result, down to like mapping functions. And I was able to do some fun, very fun metaprogramming stuff in here. For example, I learned about this requires thing, which was essentially it's the equivalent of the where keyword in, I think C# and Rust might both use the where keyword for specifying that you need interfaces on things. If you end up creating a light version of the engine, eventually you should call it the smooth version. By light, do you mean like light mode or lower power? But yeah, so this mapping function is only defined if this result actually holds a value, because we can set the value of the result to void. That's like a unit result in Rust. It's usually spelled as a light, the less heavy version. Okay. Right now, my general philosophy for tools is build them complicated first and then simplify them, because it's very easy to make well, not very easy, but easier to reduce the functionality of something, like with wrappers, than it is to increase the functionality of something that was initially simple. Because one version can already do everything, and then you're just calling functions that do less, or like creating wrapper functions that do less. Whereas the other one could only do less, and now you're trying to get it to do more. But yeah, so we did this. We also did an option type, which is very similar. And I had to refactor like 80-something files to even get the engine to compile, which it does. The editor does, in fact, compile right now. However, the instant I try to open a project, it will crash, because I haven't actually refactored the project code to use the new string serialization for asset IDs. So what ends up happening is the editor boots up, which it is currently in the process of doing. I want to multi-thread this so that you can actually move the window around while it's still booting. But anyway, so we will open this, and then it will break. So half of the refactor code is properly error handled. Low performance mode, as in smooth Brane. But yeah, so I like half error checked the code, and then I'm like, I'm gonna have to refactor all of this anyway. So why fully error check all of it? So you can see what's happening here once we get through all of the different layers. There it is. So we're just calling OK on this parse function, which returns a result. It's the parse function is properly error checked. But yeah, so this is failing because we're expecting something that doesn't exist, and I do intentionally want that to error out. So the next thing that we need to do is actually refactor the engine to be able to use this new system without everything crashing, and that means now is the time for our actual editor refactors, which, if we look at the Notion plan that we originally came up with the Reality Hack plan, originally I was thinking, all of this script, all of this week, which we're about halfway through at this point, would be adding in the scripting. We can just pick up where we left off with the engine and just immediately go to implementing new features. And then I have been the more of my old code I look at, the more I'm like, No, week 4 of make editor uncrashable. Instead of make editor uncrashable, this makes make editor not dog. Make editor not dog. We're just gonna go with make it not dog shit. So we just throw that right here. We don't necessarily need to do an entire pass for insufficient error checking. We'll just work with our option types from this point forward for error checking. But we need to refactor how projects work and this meta and Brane files thing first before moving on to anything else. Because, I don't know, it just... seeing the state of this code compared to my like modern standards as opposed to like how I used to code back in the day, I'm just like, this is unacceptable. I can't have anybody seeing this code. Like, I can barely stand to look at it. So we're gonna fix the code, and then we're gonna make the code better instead of like tarballing it very quickly because we want to be no, we do want to get to Reality Hack, but I want to get to Reality Hack with something that won't immediately blow up on my team, and then they'll be cussing me out the entire event, and nobody has a fun time. Instead, we get there with a solid, slightly less feature-rich, but very solid engine that actually works. So where to start? Hello, audio. How goes it? I guess that the editor is currently crashed out, so we're just gonna close it there. I guess I can't really like click through the UI to get ideas of what we're doing next, but I already know or have a pretty good idea. We just need to jump into the asset system and just burn it to the ground and rebuild it. I'm doing pretty good. I took a short break over the couple holiday days. I was actually still coding, but just like a break from streaming. Actually, it stayed up until like 4 a.m. both last 2 nights that I wasn't streaming. Which, to be honest, we might do here. I don't know how long I'm gonna keep streaming here, but it could be a while. It got up to like 50 something by the time I was forced to restart my computer because there was like 13 gigabytes of unaccounted for RAM that wasn't showing up in Task Manager. I'm like, we're having weird like glitches when I'm playing games and stuff. The other thing was my drives were almost full, so I took a moment to actually like clean out my hard drive and get some space. So the computer should run a lot better now and not have several gigabytes of unaccounted for RAM. But yeah, hello Square Peg, how goes it? Let's see. So yeah, we're just gonna dive right into editor stuff. And I think the best place to start is the Brane project. And also, I want to take a little bit, like a brief look at the JSON systems we have going on here. Now might also be a good time to rip out the old GLTF system and replace it with an actual loader. That way we just have a solid foundation to build on top of. Technically, my loader works for my test models, so we can dev without new ones, but I may want to grab more information about things than I currently do. That's right, I had to resort to an event system. Yeah, let's look at project first, and then we can also look at version JSON to see like how am I currently handling undo and redo systems, and is it in a way that makes sense? I do actually think the way that my undo and redo system works right now is decent. So this create function is fine. I like having the project file there storing settings. However, I don't want this assets section. And that's another thing. I want to move away from just raw using JSON everywhere, because that's prone to... That's hard to error check, because I can't... When I load a file, I don't have any way to check the schema of files. So maybe that's something to look at, is C++. Like something with like a schema validator. About half a pie of pizza. That's an interesting way to say it. I guess, is it already comfortable to use goggles or not yet? It depends on your tolerance level. This is like right on the edge of tolerance. It's a little bit heavy, but like, I am a pretty heavy VR user, I mean, I have been more so in the past, but I'm used to the weight of the headset on my face, so it's fine for me. But for other people, no. For certain headsets, they're a lot more comfortable than this one. This is like one of the least comfortable headsets I've used. What am I looking at? Oh, right, the schema validator. Is this only a validator, though? Preferably... Very stylish today. Yeah, I couldn't immediately find my the jacket that I usually use, so I'm like, you know what, I'll throw on the cloak. Which you can see, like, the hood is like barely working, and I have this paperclip here in an attempt to force it to keep working. How about text reading? Oh, I can read text fine. Like, the resolution is like good and very much good enough to be able to read text. Why is it like... Oh, that's the brightness on my cameras. I'm like, why is it like changing brightness so much? Oh, come on, stay on. So there is like a fast JSON parser for... So my main thing is, like, I want a fast JSON parser, but I also want, and it's the editor, it doesn't necessarily have to be like blazingly fast, but SIMD JSON. I like SIMD. Simultaneous input multiple data, I love that. Strict full JSON and UTF-8 validation. Lossless parsing. Oh, is this how... Oh, that's the throughput. I'm like, having the higher bar usually isn't good in performance tests. But Ooh, here's a list of the other things that I can check out. Or are these implementations of this for other languages? I know this is in Vulkan. Are you planning to support other APIs for more compatibility? Not at the moment. See, this it's going to make a good thumbnail for the stream. So I have a manually set thumbnail for the stream. So unless I take off the thumbnail, and if I change this to, yeah, I have a manually set thumbnail, so it's not going to actually show me on the thumbnail. But does this have validation? It does have a VC package. MDJSON. So let's see the quick start. I just want to see, so it has your regular like in brackets, but is there a way to enforce a schema? Enforce a schema. Errors without exceptions is how I want to do this. Oh, that's fun. It has like the bytecode. Compiler Explorer. I'm gonna have to remember that. Is there a certain define you set to have it? I bet it's a feature, or is the things. Oh, okay, so the way that it's handling this is the same way my parsing library works. You pass in the thing that you want to do, and then it like gives you the result there. Assembly is amazing. What do you mean, you? I guess if I want to enforce a schema, that's up to me to do. They may be thinking of go-to spaghetti code. I don't know. See, not liking go-to is more of like a low-level optimization dev opinion. Whereas I feel like that's more of like a, I don't understand assembly. Ah. Like, do you even know what a go-to statement is? Or why that might be bad? So I don't need a new JSON library yet. I am concerned that because like the one that I'm using, JSON CPP, I don't even know if there are benchmarks of it. There it is. Successfully benchmarked JSON CPP. So it's in the benchmark. Are they not sorted? Okay, here's the sorted version. String dump, str dump, whatever that is. The only one of the, of course it's in C. So rapid JSON, out of all these well-known ones, is the fastest. Let me guess, JSON CPP is there. So that's not terrible. It's not Arduino JSON, but the library I am using is several orders of magnitude slower than it could be. Only recently learned that you can use labels in C. And you don't need to ever use labels in C. It's like a fun trivia that you never use. That's why I stream. It's a holiday, but I enjoy coding, and it gives other people things to do on their holidays as well. Let's see. Rapid JSON schema. Thought you typed something crazy into the search bar. No. There is always that danger, though. You know, a few missed timed key presses. Oh no! My Twitch account, it's gone! Do you mentor people? I used to be a tutor for the college that I went to, and I really enjoyed it. At the moment, I don't really mentor people. Out of, like, if I'm at a job, I'll give other people advice and whatnot. So, like, nothing official. But I do enjoy helping people out with their code and whatnot. Just because it's fun. I don't have too much time right now, but it depends on like what mentoring people would look like. It would be cool to do something like a tutoring service as a way to fund this. But like, if you want to throw questions in the dev chat or whatever, feel free to. Thoughts on Rust? Love Rust. Amazing language. It's a little bit too restrictive in some ways, to the point where I don't want to use it for game dev. But for like the underlying engine itself, it does make sense in a lot of ways. This is just already a C++ project, which is the main reason why I'm not like oxidizing it. Well, I mean, I am oxidizing it. Like you're seeing result in option types in there, but I don't think it makes sense as a scripting language, which I tried to do. Brains run on Rust. Well, brains do. Indeed, oxidization. Return to the crab. But the brain script is gonna have multiple Rust-inspired things in it. But like one of like my achievements I'm most proud of is I wrote a networking solution in a month before a conference, so it was a hard deadline. And I wrote the backend for this thing in Rust, and it was for a Unity client. So for the entire conference. Can't believe Pat likes Rust. So for this entire conference, my code is running the networking solution for a live multiplayer demo at AWE, but it never crashed once. The server never crashed once. The client is another thing that had problems because it was in Unity, but the Rust backend I had written never crashed once. Which is unheard of for live demos. And I would rewrite this in Rust, but the features of I've checked. I've actually checked this and checked myself. Is the backend that I want to use for Brane script is LLVM ORC. It's they have 2 JIT runtimes. I want to use the ORC runtime. The problem is ORC only has C++ bindings, which if you've ever tried to FFI anything other than raw C into Rust, it's an absolute nightmare. You do not, and that's actually what I did, and I can say it's a nightmare because the desktop streamer project I did, I used a Rust library for the actual networking. And then on the computer side, it was a Rust desktop client to actually capture my desktop. But then on the headset side, because it was an AVP app, I had that library interfacing into Objective-C because Objective-C can link to C binaries. So I compiled the C library from Rust, which of course you have to do unsafe external functions from Rust. And then you can do in Objective-C bindings to that C library that was written in Rust. And then from Swift, you then have to do another FFI step. So what I should have done is just learned how to do netcode in Swift and then just handled networking on the other side in Rust, and then I would have been fine. But one of the main reasons that project grounded to a halt is because I didn't want to have to deal with Rust FFI. So I'm going to avoid that as much as possible for this project. And plus, if I run... if I run my little utility here that tells me how many lines of code are in the project, we're working with 21,000 lines of code, and this isn't just counting new lines, this is filtering out empty spaces and lines that are only opening and closing brackets. So this is 21 lines with things of substance on them. 21,000 lines. And I'm not currently willing or ready to convert all of that to Rust. So those are the 2 factors of why I'm not just doing the engine in Rust. The other aspect is that as an open source project, I think more people will be able to contribute to a C++ thing than a Rust thing. Now there's the other thing of it's a lot easier to validate Rust contributions. So it's I am coping a little bit with the fact that this isn't written in Rust already. However, it's fine. Most of the benefit I got from Rust was the way the data structures worked and not the borrow checker. So, and I can copy the, well, of course they keep telling you to port your render to Rust. Everybody, that's the meme of Rust, is everything should be written in Rust. Because it should be. Or, it's just a very, very ergonomic language to use. I've been talking. The borrow checker is, well, so the core philosophy of Rust is that it is very simple. You can only have one mutable reference to things or multiple immutable references, and then everything in the entire rest of the language is built around that idea. Also, never have null values. If you never allow null values into your codebase, you never deal with expecting there to be something there when there isn't. which technically option types are just nullable things. But it's like those two things of, for multi-threading, make sure that you only have one mutable reference, and then for everything else, like option type, enumerator-based error checking was the main benefit I got out of it, was learning how that worked. The move semantics are also pretty nice, like the way that they actually move structures around, and I'm just straight up copying that. Traits is, I really like how the traits work as well. I'm like straight copying a lot of the way it works for Brane script, just without the borrow checker, because I feel like the borrow checker would add too much, well, one, development overhead for me, and two, that would slow game devs down too much when they're just throwing a prototype together. But I found most of the value I got out of Rust wasn't the borrow checker, because after the first week, 2 weeks of using Rust, I stopped running into issues with the borrow checker because it had whacked me into coding in the correct way to not have to deal with it anymore. That's coding philosophy. Anyway. Right. The way editor asset works. If we go to editor asset and look at what we're dealing with right now. So, the way that we should make this work you're going to be at the XR event in Utah. Which XR event? Oh, you mean the... No, wait, that wouldn't be Utah. I will be at CES, which is next week. Yeah. Less than 7 days from now. 6 days. 5 days? I don't know. I'm flying out on the 6th to CES. And I will be at the XR Experience of Satellite event. I'm helping out with that. And then I will be at MIT Reality Hack later this month as well, which of course is what we're trying to do this stream for. Indeed, CS is fancy. Go see cool things and meet cool people. The main thing is, like, for me, is actually the people, not necessarily the tech. Because there's some very cool people that I am going to meet and have discussions with about potential partnerships, collaborations that are already in the... Were you considered a child prodigy when you were younger? I've never had the word prodigy used. I have been consistently called a genius. But like people introducing me like, oh, he's a genius, and of course I'm like, no, I'm not a genius. No, I'm just obsessed. And it's never me. It's never me saying those things. In fact, it makes me like a little bit uncomfortable because it's very like, oh, I'm a genius, superiority complex, balloon. I hope I haven't let it get to me. It definitely has, at least a small bit, but... So we're gonna have meta files, and these are going to be... So we have paired assets. So we have the asset files. Contain all data about the asset. that is non-context dependent or rebuildable without the meta file. Bad if I'm watching this, especially if I'll be at Reality Hack. It's not bad if you're watching this, especially because like I can't work on like my actual project, so you're not like getting any behind the scenes knowledge of anything. And unless I like accidentally start spilling tea about the event, but that's probably not going to happen. And there's not like anything too spicy to spill. Then the meta files, data like fake settings, IDs. Now, see, now that I say it, like, I don't, like, there's like nothing too interesting. See, and this is where I get into like, if I store IDs here, if meta files get deleted, meta files should be able to be automatically regenerated. And that would change the ID of the asset. So if any assets are referring to that, I guess that's a problem that Unity already deals with. Bomb has been planted. Well, there's no bombs. But yeah, just look for the freakishly tall guy in a green jacket, and that will be me. I am. If you know what to look for, I'm pretty easy to spot. Let's see, contain data like bake settings, IDs. Do we want to put? No, we want to put the IDs for dependencies should get stored in here. Main asset ID goes here. So for like meshes and textures, obviously we can't change this asset file at all. Whereas the meta files we can. Yes. I am noticeably tall. I act about the same IRL. I might be like a little bit more, I guess guarded might be the right term, but like as soon as you get into a conversation with me, I should be fine. You know, kind of like when you're in like in a social area, you gotta like cut off like sentences so you don't get overwhelmed. It's not getting overwhelmed if you just like don't have the data reaching your brain. Can't wait to meet Matt Pat. I'm not Matt Pat. I've never played FNAF. I'm a fraud. Main data, like big settings, main asset ID. Nonsense. Yo, Joe, how's it going? Joe in the chat. Hey Joe, you want to see some C++ template metaprogramming? let's see, where did I put it? Underneath, we need to go common, utilities, and this would be under serialized data, right here. So this is my serializer class for standard variants, which are basically Rust enums, but in C++. So yeah, we got some fun stuff going on here. Like, for example, I made it so that when we're serializing the variant, it stores the index of what type it's holding. So in here, you can see we grab the index and we either deserialize it or serialize it. But what's really fun is I made it so that depending on how many types this can store, it will actually serialize it as like an 8-byte or 8-bit or 16-bit integer. So it just compile time changes the size of the serialized object. Because I'm like, you know, in a crazy situation, I could see there being more than 256 variants. Now, I don't think that's very likely at all, but theoretically it might eventually happen. So it is possible for this to account for that at the compiler level. But yeah, that was very fun to program at 3 a.m. last night. And it probably works. Me with my 1,000th length variant. Yeah. Then again, actually, if I use variants for the bytecode of like Brane script, that could be over 200 different variants of like what this bit code could be, which I'd probably just use an enumerator for that, but I could technically use that for opcodes for serializing stuff. So I just came up with a use case. My time coding that is now justified. Watching your streams motivates me to work on Code for Real. I'm not even coding right now. I've been yapping for the last 30 minutes. Or, wait a second, what time is it? Wait, how? I've already been streaming for an hour. I haven't done anything yet. I've just been talking. Stop it. Indeed, indeed. Like, okay, back to this. So, we're gonna make editor assets split into two things. Right now, I've been stressing out about what do we put in each one. I do know the bake settings for textures and like GLTF files. That goes in here. Main asset ID goes in there. And then potentially like where this has been baked to goes in here as like build setting stuff. And then asset files is just on a per thing basis. Did you know that in type theory, a Rust enum is considered a tagged union? That's what I assumed that it was, and that's how I'm going to implement it in Brane script as well, because I am going to have Rust-style enum types in Brane engine, Brane script, because they are amazing to work with. So we are just going to dive right in, and I'm not going to... I don't need to refactor the JSON library right now. I want to refactor the JSON library right now, but I don't need to. So we're gonna rename this to just data. And then we're gonna rename it, create a new JSON value, which is metadata. Did you finish converting it to Lua? No. So I went on like after going through implementing the new script asset, I was like, oh, the way I'm currently handling like everything in the editor is like crap. We need to refactor all of this. So I'm like 1/3 to halfway done with the with that. Will Brane script have hot reloading? It's not a main priority, but it would be incredibly nice to have it, so I'm going to look into how to do that. The main like concern I have is if you change, and I mean this is like a concern with all hot reloading stuff, is how do you deal with you're running in the client and you get a change that like a script has changed and then data structures have changed. How do you deal with data structures changing? And one cool idea I had is, or really anything else in the editor. So in the editor, we have hot reloading for basically all the current asset types. So like whenever you see me changing a color on a material, that's hot reloading the entire graphics pipeline from that material upwards. So we already do have hot reloading, like editor hot reloading, everything. Like you shouldn't need to restart the entire editor for that. So editor, yes, hot reloading everything. If I do hot reloading for scripts, I feel like that needs to be a at the script runtime level thing. So theoretically, that would also mean that like if you're in a world and somebody updates their world, you would see the changes to the world. The main problem with that is, again, data structure changes. So one idea I had for that is like, what if you could define a like upgrade pipeline? So when you go to update the asset on the asset server, it compares the data types that you're uploading to the data types it already has, and if there's a clean like this data type is the old version of this new data type, and like there's weird changes between the members, what if you could define a tiny script that could run on every single one of those structures to like transfer that data over? That's one idea I had, but that's like that's a lot of work to go through for what admittedly would be a huge feature if I did get it working. Like you could be in a world and then it updates and now there's like a huge structure in the middle of the map magically. Though that's more of an art change rather than like a hot fix for a script. But data, metadata, let's change this to also just be data. And this is the main reason I do this underscore notation here that some people have complained about, because it does look weird, but it's so that I can have like function arguments and member functions that don't clash with the name. That's the main idea behind there. Oh, this is the GLTF loader. I am in the completely wrong file. We need to be an editor asset. I completely botched that. I was like, that wasn't versioned JSON. Why isn't it versioned? Because versioned JSON is how I handle the undo system. So let's rename. Here we'll have this be metadata. And the other thing we want to loosely think about here is how do we want to deal with the like people manually changing things on disk and then having this detect that and then update. Yeah, iteration time is pretty big concern. Which means, yeah, I am gonna have to spend some time trying to get hot reloading working. Oh, that's gonna be such a pain to get working, but it needs to. Yeah. See, you made the silly decision to use a super brand new networking backend for my game. Using per networking, and something's broken with the sync files. Major rip. Can't sync usernames from Steam. Rip. Gotta use RPCs like that. Hey, RPCs are actually like, they aren't new. However, they are like a pretty decent abstraction. I'm actually not a huge fan of RPCs because they are like a little bit unclear to the programmer about like what's actually going on, so it can be confusing for newer developers what an RPC is doing. I prefer it to be explicit. Wonder how Godot hot reloading works. That is a good question. Let's see here, we want to include asset. Asset. Oh, I already include asset. Or do I? I do not. I do? Oh, what I wanted to add was memory. Is what I need right now. Template argument for template type parameter must be a type. Huh? Oh. For the YouTube commenter, does Godot C# support hot reloading or just GD script? That is a good question. We have cross-platform conversations going on right now. He says he doesn't know. Contained assets. I guess the error checking for this is just not to return assets if it, like an empty vector. Get the current hash of the asset. I guess hash would be stored in the metadata side of things. The type of the asset. And what? Are these like editor asset types? No, these are regular asset types. I wonder if I want to do something more extendable than that. Ah, it's fine. Ooh. Got the link to Reddit. There, you can get C# to hot reload working if you run the game using Visual Studio. This lets you make code changes and immediately see them reflected in game. Is that like the weird Visual Studio JIT stuff where they'll like actually live change the executable? Because I feel like I remember there being stuff like that for C++. Then here, we're going to do this. can actually even change the scene files. Have changes immediately reflected in game. See, I want to do something like that. However, doing something like that requires all of your systems to work together very well, which is something I would like my systems to do. So we'll see if I can pull it off. Is it best to use GLM to extract all the math out? I mean, that's what I'm doing here, just so you don't have to manually write quaternion and matrix stuff yourself. So I would say it's worth. I can smell that my family ordered pizza. Can upgrade all of these to memory safe things. Feels like cheating sometimes. That unless you can do math better than the mathematicians that threw that together, it's not cheating. It's building on top of what already exists. But yeah, I get what you're saying. All you have to do is run if game thing running and user change script reload. Unironically, where is it? Here's my assembly reload manager. Which does essentially that. Like, every time there's a change event, I'm scared to look at this code, to be honest. Because this is like... So, the way that it's displaying stuff in, like, the actual scene is... That's, like, its own instance of ECS and all of that. But the way we edit things is only on the JSON side of things. So every time we make a change on the JSON side of things, we also need to reflect that change over to the currently running world state. So it looks like the way that I'm currently doing that is mirroring every single operation that I can do over manually, which is a decision. Other engines I've worked on do a thing where they'll rebuild the entire scene and then reload that entire scene, which is probably closer to the route that I want to take, but I'd prefer to do a thing where as long as an asset like doesn't actually depend on the content of its children, any changes to it, only that portion of the scene gets reloaded, if that makes sense. Instead of just something changed, delete everything, reload, delete everything, reload, delete everything, reload. It's a lot of work. I feel like this assembly builder could be part of the assembly asset itself. Unless this is... So if you... Also, did you know that the Godot editor has official support for Android? I didn't know explicitly, but I know that it builds to Quest, so you can actually build, like, work with Godot in the Quest headset, and that's a thing you can do. Which technically is running a fork of Android. Not to be confused with Android XR. I see. You were telling me that as I was talking about it. Now I'm gonna go here, and is there anything about this API I want to change aside from like making it so stuff is safe? I want to add a result to this as well. That way, if you get access to a pointer, the pointer is valid. I used to be a huge fan of null pointers as result checking. Nowadays, I'm like, I want a little bit more information, and a null pointer tells me basically you didn't get the data you asked for, so it probably failed. Whereas if I do like a full result type, that gives me like an entire string to work with to inform people why is their thing broken, which is a lot better for developer experience. So that's what we're going to go with. It's joystick controlled for the viewport. Wow. So why does this need to store a reference to the project? I would prefer editor assets being this self-contained store of information that you can call build asset on, and then we'll probably pass a couple more arguments for it to reference the environment for more information it might need. So if we need to also build dependencies, then this can call in and grab those dependencies. But I don't like the idea of it just having a reference. Like, global's bad, member variables, excessive member variables to make stuff easier, as Past Me was very fond of, are... I'm a lot less fond of that now. So let's see what we actually reference project for. So we use it for getting our asset ID. We don't need that anymore because we implemented UUIDs. We manually call cache on the asset. I don't feel like that should belong here either. Why am I hashing, like, hashing the asset when I just call the hash function? That is, yeah, nah. Unless, like, hashing is when I create the hash for this app. No. The cache is also where we get the asset hash from, because it hashes the built asset. Yeah, this is... So when we're checking for... Wait. So... Past Me. You were thinking... The way that But the point of hashes is to check if the thing has changed. So why are we hashing the end result instead of the thing that, like, huh? What was I doing? What was I thinking? So yeah, we're completely removing the reference to project. Then we're gonna create a couple more functions, utility functions here. This is our data file. And we're also gonna have a metadata file. Then hashing should be a stateless operation. This should also be constant. The way that we I am. So this is a standing desk. So I can... That's why I'm, like, shifting around and stuff. I might switch to to sitting in, like, an hour or so. Just so we can lock in even more. So there's several different hashes here, and I'm trying to decide. So there's the... Talking about the different hashes there could be. There could be a hash of the file at data path. Hash of the file at metadata path, hash of the built and serialized asset, hash of that cached version of the serialized asset. And I feel like this is, we're gonna store the hash of this file in metadata so we can tell when that file has changed on disk, and that triggers a reload of the metadata potentially. My hobbies outside of coding are basically just coding. Like, this is almost all I do. I've been into rock climbing, occasionally play games, but for the most part, it's like, if I have a local friend group that does something regularly, I'll go and do stuff with them. But for the most part, yeah, I just code and then I sleep on occasion, but mostly I just code. Oh, hello. I was not looking at Twitch chat. Hello. Let's see, how long ago was this? This minute? Okay, so I caught it. Indeed. How was your stream? Do you have a local friend group that's also into XR? Not at the moment. I have some that are like in the state, but not like close to me. Stream was good. What's going on here? So we are working on refactoring the way that I handle assets in my game engine, and we're currently trying to do this fast enough that I can take this game engine to a hackathon happening later this month, which we'll see how I actually do on time, because I've been, when I stream myself coding, I end up yapping too much and not actually getting too much done. So yeah, lots of design decisions being hastily made here that we totally won't regret later. But yeah, so a little bit of background on why we're refactoring so much stuff is this engine has been a side project for like 2 years or so. But like I took about 1.5 years off of working on the main engine code base to work on the scripting language for it. So it as a result of that, I've gotten a lot better at coding. I'm just a lot better at coding in general, learned some other languages as well. And then I'm like coming back to the project now. I'm like, oh, this code base is a mess. Like, this is terrible. So I've been refactoring all of my old code to bring it up to my like 2+ years improved standards and have error checking and stuff. And it's generally like the thing where you look at your old code and you go like, what absolute buffoon, imbecile wrote this? See. And the particular thing that we're working on right now is just the way that I handled the pre-baked version of assets. So the versions that were easily editable and like human readable and get diffable in the actual editor itself. And like doing stuff like making it so the project file isn't just a counter for asset IDs. Instead, we're using like UUIDs, and changing it to use meta files instead of the incredibly inconsistent, sometimes paired, sometimes not paired system that I was working on. And also questioning myself on like why every time I ask for a hash of an asset, it isn't actually the hash of the asset file in the editor browser. Instead, it's on request for a hash, building the asset, and then we're hashing the binary serialized version of an asset instead of just like parsing JSON and then getting the hash of that, or like hashing the source file if it's a model or a texture, and then figuring out changes that way. I'm like actually not sure what I was using hash for before. Before this. Let's see. UUIDs versus just hashing 4 bytes and masking off the size of hash table. Yeah, so the greater goal of this project is to make an asset streaming game engine. So the idea is that you'd have assets from all over the place on different servers. So there's a good chance that the assets in your project will also be interacting with the assets from other people's servers using this ID that is generated locally in your project. And there will be other stuff like whatever domain of server that you're hosting stuff on will be namespacing that UUID. So there's actually not going to be that huge of a chance of a collision, but UUIDs just make stuff easier. Don't you just solve the collision problem by adding more bits? Not if... For UUIDs, yes, but I wasn't using UUIDs before, and now I am using UUIDs. You still go to tube events? Not too often. I never went to the tube too often. I may as well just have one source of unique IDs. Yeah, I have one algorithm and use grabbing a random function from the OpenSSL library, so it's very much a reliable random function that is reliably random. Okay, I need to actually start working instead of just yapping. As fun as yapping is, staring at the same code is probably not that engaging. Alright, so we have the new data, we have the metadata, we have the actual path to the main data file. Type, name, all that's fine. Contained assets, signature for that looks good. Did I remove all references to the project file? Looks like I did. So let's follow through on removing all references to the larger project being accessed from the files that should just be stores of data. Except you don't want bit uniformity and randomness, you want uniqueness, which isn't the same thing. Well, with a UUID, the promise is that it's universally unique, or globally unique with a GUID. Yeah. See, differs from that in the delect. Oh, we just need to write that, and now that won't complain. So now I need to go through the rest of those assets and remove their references to the project. And I want hash to be constant. We don't need to bring in the ID. I still need to figure out where this is actually called from. Yeah, that's too generic of a term to search for. Hopefully, result of hashing the file. Well, the result of hashing the file is just to test changes. So, it's actually, did I delete the hash function entirely? Where did it go? Oh, I called it source hash. So I'll just call that hash instead. Any way you can make the text bigger for us? There is. That should be slightly better. You always listen to the music in the background, or just while streaming? So I do listen to music while coding most of the time, but the playlist changes. So I listen to stuff I wouldn't be able to listen to on stream, like extreme breakcore and like Daft Punk, which I don't think either. The extreme breakcore probably wouldn't fly just because nobody would be able to hear what I'm saying or think, and with something like Daft Punk that like nukes the stream. It's more like speedcore is usually what I listen to. It's bragging about using OpenSSL for a non-deterministic distribution instead of a deterministic, guaranteed to not collide UUID. It is a timestamp UUID. I'm using UUID standard 7, which does have timestamp, the Unix timestamp, as part of the generation. Like it's part of the spec. It is that's what they're meant to do. The build asset, right. And I'm not bragging about it. I was simply stating that that's the way I was doing it. You seem to have a very different read on the way I'm trying to communicate. I'm not bragging. Like, if anything, the way I'm talking is like I'm just excited about what I'm doing. I'm not like, oh, look at how good at coding I am. No, like there is so much to roast about this code base. No. Let's see. I'm saying that it's significantly better than what I was doing before. Not saying that it's like fully perfect. Yeah. I like a little bit of excitement. I'm probably gonna have to go into the CPP files here to actually get to the errors. This is getting cut off. But yeah, that's the C file here. Let's actually do assembly assets first, because those are going to be the most hardest thing. Talking about an OpenSSL security RNG function is a hell of a lot more different than I already have a deterministic source of non-colliding UIDs using. No, I conform to an actual UUID spec, and I'm just saying that one of the sources of randomness, because there is like sources of randomness, is from that library, is all I'm saying. What do you use to record your screen? Just OBS. Let's see. It's already changed the signature of build asset, so that's good. Looks like the rest of this is fine. Any goals for the new year? Main goal I have is to get a multiplayer instance of something built in the engine up and hosted by the end of the year. So like hold a community meetup inside of the software that we're building here. That's like the main goal. I'd also like to move out of my parents' place. That's another like that's another side one that would be nice. Not like necessary, but like would be very nice. Because I was living on my own for like a while and then had to move back in because the last startup I was at blew up. So my goal is to write a full Vulkan game engine. Good luck. And I mean that as like an encouraging thing. Vulkan game engines are very fun. Will be a learning experience at the very least. And at the best could be something more. Not sure how to get started though. Look up, so there's a very good resource for just getting started with Vulkan. I'm gonna assume that you're using C or C++. I know that your past stuff was in Java, but with Vulkan you're probably doing C or C++. So there's this thing, vulkantutorial.com, vulkan-tutorial.com. And I mean, this is how I got started. Gets you all the way from drawing a triangle all the way to like texture mapping and depth buffering. And I think, where would it be? I know it like teaches you how to load meshes as well. That might be vertex buffers, or I'm not actually seeing here, but somewhere in here they actually did put a guide on actually loading a model. Let's see, build asset does not match any. To go back here to the build asset. Hides virtual member function. You shouldn't be hiding it. It should be overriding it. Build asset unique pointer. It is a little bit distracting. Like, my productivity is definitely less. But it's also a good good exercise for me to get better at focusing. Non-virtual member function marked override hides a virtual function. Doesn't override make it virtual though? Or do I need to throw virtual on the end of this if it's the first one doing a pure virtual? Virtual result, unique pointer asset, build asset. Oh, this still has the asset ID on it. That would explain it. So let's actually go through the header files one by one and make sure that all of them are correct. Oh, wait a second. That's why I put the asset ID in. Right. Yeah, no, we do want the asset ID in here. I completely forgot about why I did that. And the reason is, let's say you have a mesh asset or a mesh asset or like a GLTF. A GLTF is a good example because I may want to rehandle the way I handle submeshes at the moment. But let's say you have a GLTF. A GLTF, like, single file might have embedded images in it, and you might want to treat those images as a separate asset than the actual main asset itself. Or I guess that really depends on the way that I want to handle the pipelines. Like, when you import a GLTF, should you be able to use those images straight out of the GLTF, or should I have an editor utility that outside of the regular asset flow extracts those assets out into their own assets, have those then be picked up by the asset system, and now those are single assets. That would also, like, currently, the way that I handle all the submeshes in GLTF is each one is stored as or treated internally as a entirely different mesh asset. Instead of being submeshes of, like, one asset. Which you're always going to want all of them together in most cases, though in some cases not. Like, if you import an entire GLTF as an entire scene, it might not make sense for all of those to be in the same spot. So yeah, I think for now we stick with the multiple assets can be in a single asset source file, and we'll just have to account for that in our understanding of how this is working. I guess then I could have the meta file be partitioned, so per contained asset of the larger asset, there's a section in the metadata file for those particular assets. So we could have, like, the metadata for the file itself, and then metadata sections for each asset contained within it. That makes sense. So let's just go through these. Undo my forgetting of what 2 years ago me thought. Type safing this, or memory safing it. Pair. No, not pair. Unique pointer. And then that all looks fine. Then looks good. On to the next one. Would be cool if I could figure out, like, Vim key bindings for changing the signature of entire functions. That would be nice. Am I actually going to put the effort in to learn that? Not anytime soon. Okay. Now, if I go back to editor asset and this open unknown asset, can I navigate to it? No. I bet the constructors are still not quite correct. We still have Brane project here. But not there. Did I just forget to write it? Probably. Must explicitly initialize member metadata. What is JSON tracker? Ah, okay. That should be something that is handled by the project itself. Or the JSON tracker. How do I want to handle the JSON tracker? So this is the way the undo system in the engine currently works, is... What file is this? Editor CPP? Okay. So I probably need to split this out into its own set of functions. It looks like the JSON tracker. Yeah. Oh wait, no. I'm dumb. This is just the reference to the JSON tracker, which is in the JSON versioner. This is a global queue of all of the changes happening in the project. I should probably make this slightly more generic. So it's not just JSON files we can track. Unless I want to track the state of the entire editor, anything that can be undoable or redoable, as a like JSON change. But I don't think that really makes sense. So instead of version, or only JSON, make a global commands queue. And that way the undo system could also handle, could be commands or events. This is similar to an idea that I had for a different editor system where the entire editor would be able to be accessed through command prompt commands as well as through a GUI. So if you wanted to navigate it through only a, like, write a script that does stuff in the engine, you could do that. And it would, like, execute graphically as well. And that is kind of similar to this, though I don't want to remake that entire test system. At least not right now. So we can do like a prototype commands / event queue. Which every single event here would be like a bi-directional event, as I already do with the JSON. This could also be a place to handle editor events, which is currently how like editor state talks to different parts of the editor, which is finicky and inconsistent. Like if I select an asset in the file browser widget, it sends a global event, and if the data window is listening to that, it can then display that asset because it goes, oh, this asset has had the select or focus event. And then the scene view also sees that event and goes, oh, I should load this asset into the scene view as well. I don't like how that is each system independently managing its own state. That feels a little bit dangerous to me. Yeah. So what I'm thinking of now, instead of this old system, where we have a versioned JSON class, and this versioned JSON class and the way that this versioned JSON class works is we load the JSON and then we have operations for each different thing it can do. It doesn't look like... Where are the JSON events? We have like one event that can be multiple events. We have just a change where we change one value to another value. And we do both the before and after. And there, that's like the simplest one. There's also array changes like inserting or removing values, and of course the reason this is the way it is because it can insert or remove because you just swap the way the command works for adding or removing. But this could be more generic. Wait, is that all I have? Just the array change and the other change? I guess technically this could handle inserting or removing values from an object as well. Because what I'm very tempted to do right now is, right now, the way that I'm interacting with editor assets is I'm storing the like half-parsed JSON value. So this is the JSON parsing library, and we're just actively using... This is the wrong place to look at this. But if we go into, say, the assembly asset, that will be the most egregious example of this. You can see a lot of square brackets with strings in them, and that's because I am directly using the JSON representation of this object as the state for this object, which is not ideal. That's not ideal at all. For speed or for the programmer or for just the usability of the system at all, and I'm honestly surprised I got as far as I did just using this system, because yeah, it's easy to implement this for one singular asset, but then now I have like 6 different asset, well 7 if you count this, like actual assemblies. No, assemblies are up here. 6 different pretty large different asset types, and that's not even including like the assembly builder when we actually convert from the assembly to like editor asset to the actual. That's not as much code as I was thinking it would be, but yeah, that's only 450 lines of code. But what would be more ideal? What would be more ideal here is we have a global commands events queue, and then we make a more generic like a versioned object. And the way that these versioned objects could work is, and see, this is where it gets into like, it's super easy to version JSON because it's like, you write the versioner for one type of value and then you're good to go for everything. For a native C++ object, it's a lot harder to version that, but it'd be a lot more extensible, or is extensible the right word? I don't know, I just pulled that out of the air. But just a more generic way of handling stuff, where we could have versioned objects made out of versioned, like a versioned int, and then a versioned float. And I need to come up with a, maybe tracked is a better word. Tracked float. I am less likely to mess up the spelling on that. Tracked object. And a tracked object could be made out of tracked ints, tracked floats, a tracked array, or tracked list. And each one of these would re-implement the same interface for tracking changes to them, where every single operation, like mutation operation on them, could return a tracked value change. Or, yeah, a tracked value change or event. Yes, I have played with Bone Lab. I played through the entire game in like one sitting the day it came out. Love that game. But tracked value change. Right. And this would just store how to do undo operation. And this would also store a pointer reference to original value. The music in those games are amazing. And that offloads the need to like because of how these objects or values work, that would offload the whole Come on, Brane, work with me here. I feel like the events would be easier to work with. And then for like a larger object, the structure for those could be a lot simpler, since the versioning would be down to the individual value level instead of the greater object level. Now, there's the question. How would we handle a tracked change where we have a value in an array, and thinking about this, if we have a... Oh, I do not want to use AI. Say we change value in array, and then we immediately do a delete value from array. So we've now removed the value from the array. How would this object, let's say we wanted to undo this. So now after going back one step, the value is back in the array. But for this event to work, it would then need to be able to undo the change to that value, but the value was deleted, so that reference is potentially invalidated. And a potential solution to this would be having everything here be a reference counted pointer, like a shared pointer. That way, like, the value isn't actually deleted, like, actually deleted. This event here would still store a reference to the still existing value that was deleted from the array. So when we do the undo, the reference that this value has, this event has, is still intact. And that is, yeah, that's something that could be done. The other thing that I want to do for this tracked object is come up with a structure where we can register listeners for changes to children and changes to parents. Mostly changes to children. I'm not quite sure when we would need changes to parent. When would we need changes to parent? Coming up on a blank, but just a way to figure out if this object has changed. And that would allow me to completely also replace the current command and event systems in the engine, where instead of there being like the instead of this viewer here relying on an event from, instead of this viewer and this viewer relying on an event from this UI window to then change their state to reflect what's going on in this UI window, instead there could be a shared versioned object. So when I like click to select this asset in the file browser, there would then be a change would be recorded. So now it's in the undo system, and then that event then an event could be fired that would allow those editor windows to then switch over to the switch over to displaying whatever information is needed about that particular asset, and then be a very elegant way to handle state. So I think, yeah, that's what we're going to go with. So no events queue, only global command, global change. Ledger. To use fancy terms, we'll call it a ledger. And then events, like editor window events, could be just subscribing to, hey, does the float of what the selected value is change? And then we also, because we want to track changes with these things, we could make JSON values a tracked value type. But if we're going to go into the effort of making this system, then I think it makes sense for us to do away with using JSON as like the main store of the editor asset state. Yes. So what we'll do is make another serializer, like make a clone of the binary serializer for tracked object JSON. That way, when we load editor assets, we can just convert it into this. That way we can also validate the schema of the JSON in one place instead of having potential error, like, is name set when we get to here? But I don't know. This is the build assembly. Build assembly could be called from anywhere in the engine. We have no way to ensure that this value is valid, so we either need to error check it every time, or have one singular, when we load the asset into memory, that's when we validate that it's valid. And yeah. I don't want to ask AI. And that way I can be a lot more strict about what is actually in that object. Ooh. So I guess this isn't even assets. This is an entirely new thing. What do we want to call this? Do we call it editor state? Do we call it editor versioning? I like state, editor state. Oh, we've accidentally made a file. So I'm gonna call that stuff so we actually need a CMake. Do we need a? Yeah, we need a CMake lists. call it state. This is a static. Potentially it's just on your end. I occasionally get stuttering, but that's just because it's on my headset side. See, if I listen to the audio here. It seems to be fine on the stream side, at least locally. Yeah. Oh, I need that muted. Mute. There we go. And we probably... Well, we don't need to link anything right away, but I do know that we're going to need JSON CPP, at least for now, very soon. I think it's 2 colons, isn't it? It is. Then let's start building out the versioner. So that we can build it in step with the... Create a new thing here, versioned value. Or wait. I wanted to call these tracked value. Is track value? It is. So what things do I want to be common between all of these? I don't necessarily... I'm thinking about if I need them all to be stored in the same place anywhere, and because it would be very nice to like track value, like to template this. Like so. And that way all my values could be like, tracked value T, so like when you do get value, it would get the value. Or we could store the value there and do a default implementation of stuff. I guess I could do it with template specialization. Like say tracked. And just template specialization it, and then value changed event. Actually, template specialization is probably the perfect way to handle this. Especially since at no point do I think I'm ever going to need to put every single tracked value or any list of tracked values into a list anywhere. So templating is fine here. Say default. Sounds like there's somebody playing the trumpet. Why is this complaining? Oh. Well, why is this complaining? Default is a keyword. Oh, okay. Standard move not there? Standard move is like a very generic thing, though. Where can I get it from? Utility. Who's playing on the trumpet right now? I have many siblings, all younger than me, so there's always chaos in the background. Come on, Brane, do stuff for me. We have the track type. Right. What I was gonna do is make the event for the tracker. Because the actual tracked values, the tracker doesn't care about those at all. We're gonna create a class. We're gonna call this siblings. many siblings. See, state manager is far too generic, but this is essentially like the manager for the editor state. And music just restarted again, so let's find a slightly different tone. You're one off. Give the value. T reference. No, wait. Const T reference. Value. This will also be constant. And we can actually predefine this as... Yeah. That's why I can like almost still fully concentrate when like chat's going. It's because like I'm used to the background noise. And then we want this to return an editor event. Call this an action manager, like the actions we do in the editor. I think that's fine. Edit for action. We'll call them editor actions for now. And say public. Virtual void do undo. Or perhaps so we have, I was watching a GDC talk from guys who made Horizon Zero Dawn on like their editor utilities, and the way that their undo redo system works is very similar to what I was trying to do before, in that like basically they described very similar thing to what I'm doing. However, the main difference was that every single undo step contained 2 different actions, and to like undo stuff, you would just swap them. Which I'm wondering if it makes sense for, instead of like the editor action containing both the undo and the redo step, to instead have the editor action I guess that could be a could handle that through a design thing. Just like always implement it with the undo and redo steps under a larger class. Because like the undo of because like let's say you have an array and you want to insert something into the array and also remove something from the array. You need the same data to both insert and remove. But the operations are different, and they're like exact opposites. So I'm just trying to figure out an elegant way to define actions that are reversible without the editor action manager knowing like which way they're currently configured to go and being able to reverse that. Yeah, how do I handle direction of the assets or of the actions well? So if we have a struct editor action, we could have a forward action and a backward action. And I just have void pointer here as a placeholder. And both of those need the same information. And if I did it this way, you could just swap the forward and back pointers. And then have the same state for both of them. So if we have a standard to an editor action context, that we get a editor action executor. And we did virtual result. I went into Rust mode there for a moment. And I need to import utility. And then we have an operator, and this is just the call operator. Does that work? It does. And then we just take a and we'll take a constant reference to an interaction context, because we don't want this to be changed in any way. That will make our editor action executors executable. Technically, these could be shared pointers, because all this is a lookup table for our function. This doesn't actually need to be anything fancy or other than just a lookup table. Which, if this executor is just a function, why don't I just standard function it? I could just totally... use our editor action executor. It's equal to standard function. Result void. And then we'll have a const unique pointer, editor action context. Then for both of these, we could just put in editor action executor. Boom. And this will be the size of 3 pointers. And for this, I'm going to yoink how the JSON versioner works. Wherever that might be. Oh, it's in utility? I don't want to use this in utility. I'm not going to use this anywhere else. I remember this class being a lot more extensive than it looks like it is. And since we won't be overriding editor action, we can just do editor action here. And I'm gonna up this to like 500. Which might be too much, but hey. We will see. We'll step forward. A forward step, a backward step. Indeed, I am still recording. We're at like 2 hours and 30 minutes. But I might actually hop off soon. Spent an hour editing 45 seconds of a YouTube video. I mean, that's how it goes. Like that like 40-minute video I posted, I spent like, I want to say 5 days of like just several hours. It like took me several hours to do one pass, then several hours to do another pass, and several hours to do another pass. And I think I did like four passes, and each pass took like an entire day. It's like I'm looking forward to, but also dreading the next video I make. Because now I have a level of standard to keep up to. You ever get on VR chat these days? Not as often as I would like to, because a lot of times I'm working instead of doing stuff. But, I do. If there's like an event that I want to go to. I should have hopped in for New Year's. I should have definitely done that. What happened to the simple days of YouTube where I could upload an hour of raw and edited footage? I know, man. I used to just throw like barely edited tutorials up on YouTube and they would do fine. And then what are these uncompleted change? All right. This is my wanting to preview positions in the editor before actually committing it. guess I would have to do a change previewer. Or something like that? I don't know. I will watch that later when I am not streaming. Let's give it like 20 minutes. That way I can hit like the 3-hour mark on this stream. Yeah, so how do I want to handle when I am like, let's say I'm sliding a float value, and that float value is the position of an object. I want to see the position change reflected in the viewer before that change is like locked in as a like step that we can go back to. Because like if I committed a change for every single step of like dragging that slider, suddenly we have 1 per frame undo steps. So if you wanted to like click undo button to undo the change, then yeah, you're like, you have several hundred steps to go back through. So what I think I did here was either I did multi-JSON changes. I think that was for like when I did multiple things at once. And this is something I do want to carry over. Uncompleted change. Oh. So how would I indicate that a JSON change was not completed? That is the main current change, uncompleted. Oh Joey, this is on the version to JSON itself. So if the change, okay, so I could just oh. So I didn't realize I was looking at the version to JSON here. So I just set a new value, and then I also said, like, if the change was complete or not. Something like preview value, or quickly undoing and redoing every single frame, because we could undo and redo every single frame. Like that is a thing that we could do. Not really like a super clean way to do this. Alright, I have been streaming for a little bit, and my brain is cooked at the moment. So I'm gonna think about how do I handle actively previewing a change, for lack of a better term, without, and like triggering on the change events and all of that stuff. I know I actually did something like this in Wonderland Engine when I worked there. So in Wonderland Engine, when you drag a material onto an object to preview it, it'll commit a change to the undo system. And then when you slide off of that material, so you're no longer hovering over that object, you're hovering over a different object, it would then trigger an undo action, so it reverts the object to the previous material, and then it will set the material for the next one. So I might go down that route of just every single frame, do, undo, do, undo, do, undo, do, undo, do, undo, do, undo. So you're just like popping the last change off the stack and then repopping it on. Aside from this context variable, maybe I could do the pop last action if it's that. Anyway, yeah. Gonna hop off, eat food, and then come back and work on this a little bit more off stream. But yeah, I should be back tomorrow if nothing else comes up, and depending on how late I stay up. But yeah, for those of you who stuck around, for those of you who raided and then stuck around, there's still a lot of you over there. For all of you, thank you for sticking around. It means a lot, and I will see you next time.